Hello, my name is BMFox and welcome to an edit of the beginner's guide. This time I am playing Axis Doctrine. As you can see, I am Central Mexico. So first time when you join a game, first thing you want to do is you want to go to the research tab. And for Axis Doctrine, I want to start with armored cars. So that's what I'm gonna do immediately. As I am coastal, next thing that I want to do is I want to research subs, as also subs they get a doctrine bonus. There we go. So now I'm gonna need a naval base. I've got a choice between my capital and La Ceiba. One is in the Pacific, one is in the Atlantic. And I'm also gonna need 2 tank plants. So I'm gonna make a tank plant in San Jose in the south. And I am going to make a tank plant also in Guatemala. Okay, so we got that building. So now I am constructing, I am researching. I need to wait until my construction and research is done before I can produce units. So in the meantime, there's a couple of things that I can do. For starters, I'm gonna check my messages because I've joined with a couple of friends. What you always want to do is you want to fight a couple of allies. They should be experienced players or players that are at least active. And then the other thing I will do is I'm gonna give trade embargo to the AI players. You have these small nations over here, they only have 10 or 20 points. They are small AI countries and they can give you extra resources. Diplomacy is important with them. So what I'm gonna do, I am going to put him on trade embargo, which is Honduras. There we go. I'm also gonna put Panama on trade embargo. There we go. Those are the only AI that are accessible for me. So I have given my immediate neighbor AI trade embargo. So now I'm gonna go to the diplomacy menu and I'm gonna click score. And then all these other small nations over here, I'm gonna give them shared intelligence. You can give players shared intelligence if you have a premium account, which enables you to share your spy data and the intel you get from spies or other units with your allies. So that's what I'm doing right now. And if you give shared maps to AI nations, then you tell them that you are their friend and then you're gonna be popular. You want to be popular with AI because if you are unpopular, then AI risks to attack you and you don't want to be attacked by an AI in the back. Now we have the AI that have 20 points. Let's give them all shared intelligence. If you don't have premium account, then you can just give them shared maps instead. With Axis Doctrine, I also want to make at least 1 aircraft factory so that I can make planes. I'm just in range with this one, so either I need to build it in San Salvador or La Ceiba. I'm gonna go for La Ceiba. We're gonna build an aircraft factory in here because I'm gonna need interceptors if I want to protect my airspace. And then in San Salvador, I am going to build a naval base. And San Salvador will be closer to the Panama Channel, only a bit, so that helps. And then central in my country, I have 1 city left where I am going to construct a secret lab. This way I will be able to produce rocket artillery on day 2, which is a very good unit, and then railroad guns on day 4, which is undoubtedly the best unit there is for Axis. When you've chosen a country, you have noticed that some countries have other doctrines. There are 4 doctrines in the game. In this game I am playing Axis, and Axis is all about power. Their units get 15% more hit points, meaning they have 15% more health. So they're more difficult to kill, and they also deal 15% extra damage. That is pretty cool. This makes Axis the perfect doctrine for aggressive early gameplay. They have a production cost of an additional 10%, so units are more expensive. Axis is a favored doctrine by beginners because, well, you have way much power in the early game with your starting units. You deal more damage, which gives you an additional security, and the tank range from Axis is pretty good and beginners tend to love tanks. However, with their additional production costs, the economy playing Axis is a bit harder to master. The second doctrine is Allies Doctrine, which is all about optimization. They can produce their units 30% faster, their research time and cost is 25% faster and cheaper, and their upgrade cost and time for units, so if you level them up, is 20% faster and 20% cheaper. But as a downside, Allies Doctrine, they move 10% slower. So if you're Axis and you attack an Allies player, then you're gonna deal 15% more damage than the Allies player, and you're gonna move 10% faster. That is a good advantage. Then we've got Comintern. Comintern is all about quantity. Their units are 15% cheaper, and each unit costs resources of daily upkeep, and so the upkeep cost for Comintern is 30% cheaper, so they can spam large armies and maintain them easily, which makes the combination with economy much more simple. However, they also get a buff, they deal 10% damage, and as Axis has 15% more damage, 15% more hit points, their units are hard to kill, and there's a damage gap of 25%. You deal 25% more damage. That is great. You're gonna be less confronted with the Pan-Asian doctrine, as those are only played on larger maps like the 50-player Pacific or the 100-player World at War. You can also see them on the 30-player historical map. Pan-Asian is all about surprise. They move 20% faster, they have an additional view range of 30%, and they get an additional terrain bonus of 20% for all units that get terrain bonuses. So for example, an armored car gets 50% bonus in the plains, while a Pan-Asian armored car is gonna get 70% terrain bonus, which is pretty cool. However, they've got a buff, they have 10% less hit points, so their units are easier to kill. So if you attack a Pan-Asian player, make sure that you attack in a terrain where your units are in the advantage, so that the Pan-Asian units can't get the advantage of their terrain bonus, and there's a 25% gap in between hit points, so your units are way more harder to kill. So if you manage to lock a Pan-Asian army into melee combat, they're gonna dwindle down fast. You can see that we have different kinds of resources. We have got money, food, goods, manpower, metal, oil, and rare materials. Manpower is what is needed to man your units. You might be able to build an armored car, for example, but you also need the manpower to man those units. If I click on the wiki, then you can find a lot of information here. And when I click on resources, you can see that food is mainly used for producing infantry type units. It is also required for producing other unarmored units and ships. Goods are mainly used for ordnance units, but you also need them for light armored vehicles and airplanes. Metal is used for light and heavy tanks, but also for other vehicles and ships. Oil is mainly used for heavy armored vehicles and also required for producing motorized units, including heavy armored and light armored vehicles, airplanes, rockets, and ships. Rare materials are mainly used for production of airplanes and secret weapons, but they are also required for heavy armored vehicles. Manpower is only used to produce units, but every type of unit requires it. And then finally, money is used for every unit and building type, as well for trading resources on the market. And then gold, well, with gold you can instantly do actions, premium actions as a speeding up production, construction, research, increasing morale of provinces, healing lost hit points, and so on. And then here you have the map controls. You can select extra information about displaying province names, displaying resources, fog of war. You can choose to another map mode. You can, for example, show relations. Then when I close over here, you can see that the map is now becoming gray. Friendly nations are green, and nations with whom I am at war will be red. I'm gonna put it back to show nation colors. You can display a lot of different army types. You can select some units to find them easier, and then you can put the map on green screen like I have done, or here right to that, you can have the refresh button. We've got different tabs. You got the newspaper, in which you can find interesting stuff each day. For starters, this is the wealthiest nations. There's not a lot of interesting news in the newspaper when you start a game, but you can find a lot of information here throughout the game. The diplomacy menu I've opened already. Then you've got a stock market. You can buy cheaply resources or less cheap, because 12 money for one food is expensive. So I should wait until resources get cheaper. Then we've got coalitions. You can make a coalition with 4 players play together. You've got the spy menu, but so far I have no spies and they are expensive, so you shouldn't use them in the early game. Then you've got province administration. You can see what is happening in your country. It's pretty practical. Then you've got the army list. You can see all my units are idle. So this is the next thing that I should change. You start the game already with a lot of units. If I use my left and right mouse, I can make the lasso tool, which is a blue field, to select all my units. As you can see, you start with quite a lot of starting units: 32 infantry, 6 armored cars and 1 interceptor. That is the double compared to most other maps. This is a balanced map, so everybody starts with the same units, but if you're gonna play any other map like a Clash of Nations, World at War, Blitzkrieg, usually you're gonna start with only 2 armored cars, 16 infantry, 3 anti-air and 1 interceptor. So this is a lot of units, which makes it more difficult for Axis Doctrine to Blitzkrieg, as there's more units to kill. For starters, I'm gonna put my plane on patrol. It's gonna be very handy to scout North Mexico to see what he's doing. I'm gonna put all my units up north, or at least a lot of them, because I feel that I need to take care of South Mexico before that he can take care of me. You can also click on your left and right mouse button, and then you can use the blue lasso tool, as you can see. So now I've selected these 3 units. We're gonna move them over here as well. I'm gonna split this one up. I'm gonna leave the anti-air behind, because anti-air moves a bit slower, and I want to keep units in my cities in case I get attacked. Then they can stop attacking units and defend. If you click on the unit, then you can see their specifications. You can see that the anti-air moves only at 30 speed, and they're a cheap defensive unit which protects provinces and units from air attacks, wherever as infantry they have 36 speed, so they're a bit faster than anti-air, so anti-air slows your units down. And then the fastest unit with whom you started is the armored car, which moves at 55 speed, which is a lot, and they deal 5.3 damage in defense versus an armored units. They're very good, one of the best early game units for the Axis Doctrine. They are a scout unit, so they can reveal stealth units. They have a large line of sight, so you can easily spot units, and they attack unarmored units like infantry. Armored cars are fast defensive units which can be moved from one province to another to provide defense against incoming attacks from unarmored units. Their view range makes them well suited to scout out enemy troop movements or reveal stealth units. They're a bit weaker in attack than in defense, but in early game they're still pretty good in attack, especially as you only have unarmored units like anti-air or infantry at the start of the game. The units in Call of War, they move slowly. You can see that it's gonna take me 4 hours and 11 minutes to move through the hills. You can see the terrain over here, hills and valleys with differences in altitude. Naval ordnance units to inflict more damage to their opponents. Ordnance units are, for example, artillery and anti-air. You get unit bonuses there. Over here in the forest, for example, the dense vegetation enables infantry and stealth units to inflict more damage. So it is important in the game to use these terrain into your advantage. Armored cars, for example, they get a bonus in planes, which you can see here below. In planes, they get a 25% extra speed and 50% extra damage output. However, they have reduced speed in hills and mountains, so it is important to know. These other units, I'm gonna keep them on my coastline because I am wary of an attack that might come from Colombia as soon as he joins. Colombia is now a player. Let's see, he's only level 2, so he's a beginner. And then in South Mexico, we have a level 44. If I click here on service record, I can see who he is. He joined 5 games. He has killed 92 units, lost 47. So for every unit that he loses, he kills 2. So that's pretty good. He's in an alliance, so he might actually have alliance mates on this map. That's something to consider. Ideally in the early game, you can attack a player who is Comiteran, because then you have a 25% damage output difference, or you attack an allies doctrine player where you have a 15% damage output strength and 10% slower. However, where I'm positioned now, I'm not gonna have an early game exploit that I can use to attack a weaker doctrine, which is a bummer, but it is what it is. You can see they have been invited into a coalition, have been invited by Mexico City. Now, it is a big mistake to join a coalition with your neighbors or countries next to you, because they block your path of expansion, right? The most logical thing for me to do would be to ally myself with Colombia or Venezuela and then move north, which means that I can't be a friend with Mexico City because I'm gonna have to attack him if I want to expand, or I can befriend myself with Mexico City and then attack the South Americans so that I can watch my 6 and prevent any attacks from the back. As Mexico City has invited me in his coalition, let's see who he is. He's level 58. I'm gonna go to his service record. Oh, he has joined 148 games, being only level 58, which is a beginner's level, only won 1 game. So this means that this player joins a lot of games, abandons a lot of games, and for every unit that he kills, he loses 2. So he's a very weak player. He loses also a lot of provinces. He loses more provinces than he captures, so this is not a good player at all. What I could do is offer him to attack South Mexico together, for example, and then attack him as soon as that is done. That would be an option if I wish to do so. If I may give you one advice, you should never trust players in this game because they could always backstab you. That being said, I'm gonna send a message to him. Right, so I proposed him to be allies. I'm not gonna propose him to attack Mexico together because I want it all for myself. So I have constructed buildings, I have researched units, I have finished with the diplomacy, and I am moving my units. Now I need to wait until my research and construction is done so I can start producing units. When you join a beginner's map like this one, it is always good to scout your neighbors to see if they are active, because this is a real-time strategy game and not everybody has the patience for this. As this is a beginner's map, a lot of players abandon this game. So let's see if something has been constructed. I see question marks over here. There's no building in Buramanga. There's a building in Medellin, also in Bogota, but not in Cali. So that could be buildings from the tutorial. Not sure if he's active. We'll see later. There's nothing here in Maracaibo. 1 building in Merida. Nothing in Baraximo. 2 buildings in Caracas, however, and there's also a building in Maturin, so it's not clear if this player is active. We will see. Time will tell. Alright, I have new notifications. I can see in my front reports that both my tank pens were constructed and armored car research is completed. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna research in the tank branch light tanks. Let's go. Light tanks are fast offensive units. They are not the strongest tanks, but because of their speed and low cost, a good choice for rushing into enemy territory. They are best used in fast attacks on light armored targets, notably armored cars. Light tanks are very good in countering armored cars, which is what I intend to use them for. They are fast, so they stack well with armored cars who are countering unarmored units. Light tanks counter light armored units, which is both armored classes that we can find in ground battles early on, so that's great. So now also going to produce armored cars. And I'm gonna put 2 more in the queue as I have premium account. I'm gonna do the same over here. There we go. As I have premium account, I can set rally points. So I'm gonna set a rally point over here. Now that South Mexico is a player country, I have 2 cities in my range, so I'm gonna patrol over him so I can see what is happening, because you see these dots over here and these waypoints. All units that you move are obligated to use these waypoints and to pass by the province center. So if I scout over here, I'm gonna see what the enemy is doing and I'm gonna see what he is building. Knowledge is power. From the buildings that are built over here, I will know what strategy he will apply and what units I will need to counter them. Because in Call of War, every unit has a counter unit or multiple counter units. Thanks to my interceptor, I can see that my soon-to-be enemy is moving units towards my border. That doesn't mean that he's going to attack me, because, well, it is a logical thing to do. However, with this knowledge, I'm gonna send these units over here, and I am going to split off my armored cars, because they move faster. There we go. And I should at least send a couple units over here as well. As soon as more units are arriving, I'm gonna be able to man my borders better so that I have everything I need to initiate an attack. Interceptors are perfect in the early game because you can use them as scouts, and they're also the best defense against bombers. They deal 6.9 damage versus other aircraft and they're super fast. 480 speed, and even at level 1 they have a 250 kilometer attack range, as you can see on the circle over here. They are anti-air, aircraft and carryable, so you can land them on an aircraft carrier. Interceptors are the key in gaining air superiority. They are best used to fight other aircraft or to scout out enemy positions. They can also help with revealing and tracking down stealth units. As you can see, they're very weak against land units, against all armored classes, also against ships and submarines, so you should only use them against other aircraft. I've realized that I shouldn't have built a naval base in San Salvador, because South Mexico, he has no coastal cities here on the Pacific coast, but he has 2 coastal cities here in the Atlantic, so he's gonna make navy there and I'm gonna be defenseless. And then you also have the risk of Colombia that can actually invade me. So as soon as I've taken Belize City, I'm also gonna build a naval base there so that I can produce a navy both in the Pacific and the Atlantic. And I've seen for Mexico that so far he hasn't built anything, which doesn't help me, because that means that South Mexico can send all his units to me. So just scouting out these nations, see what they are building or if they are building, can tell you a lot. Also over here I see units moving to my border, so that is not good. In his capital he has a barracks, so most probably he's gonna go for motorized infantry. So it is good that I'm going for armored cars, as that is the direct counter to motorized infantry. I'm gonna send my armored cars actually over here, because here they are the plains where armored cars can get a bonus. So if motorized infantry are going to attack somewhere, it is most probably gonna be over here. For some reason I cannot see what kind of building he has built, which means construction has not finished yet. I'm gonna try to take the way of diplomacy with South Mexico. So I'm just letting him know that I saw him moving towards me, that I'm not happy with it, and that Mexico City would be a better target. Maybe he's gonna take the bait. If he does, he's gonna have less units on my front and I could be able to take him over. Or I could befriend him so that I can attack the South Americans. We will see. Diplomacy is important in this game. Now I can see the building. He is going for artillery. That ain't good, because I didn't plan to go for artillery actually. But if he goes for artillery and I don't, I could get into trouble. Artillery is an ordnance unit that permits you to attack from a range. They can bombard you from a distance from 50 kilometers away. They're very slow, 30 speed, but they make that up for the fact that they don't take any counter damage when they fight units, as they fight from a distance. Artillery is an offensive unit that is most effective against armored targets and buildings. It can bombard enemy from a safe distance without taking damage and should be placed behind other fighting units. They don't deal a lot of damage against unarmored units, however they deal quite some damage, 2.3 against light armor and a lot of damage against heavy armor, 3.1, so that is not very good. That's not what I'm wishing for. For Axis Doctrine, they're very expensive. They cost 1.8 goods and 1.2 manpower. That is tremendous. He has a couple of hills, but I have a lot of hills here in my territory. They give artillery bonuses. If he's gonna go for artillery, I am not going to like it. Artillery is a good early game unit, but as it's expensive for Axis, I decided against it for the build order to make it, as it is slow and it doesn't bring out the best potential of Axis Doctrine, which is fast and aggressive, as both my secret lab, naval base and aircraft factory have been constructed. I have all my construction slots that are open over here, so I can build again. The most advised would be to build economical buildings which are industry. However, they cost a lot of steel, oil and rare materials. They are rather expensive, but they increase your research production with 10% at level 1, and they can double your resource production at level 5. They're very interesting. However, as Axis Doctrine is expensive, I prefer not to build them in the early game, but to pay them with the spoils of war. I'm mainly gonna need steel and oil. So in the cities you produce 4,600 oil. However, I'm only at 70% morale. With a maximum morale, you're gonna produce over here 6,000 oil, 600 manpower, and also 6,000 money. I have an additional rural oil province. When on maximum morale, they produce 1,500. You also have rural provinces where you don't produce any resources. However, you produce more money and manpower over there than you do in the rural province with resources. If you want to know more about economy, click the card in the upper right corner for my economical guide. So I have extra rural provinces. I have 1 oil, 1 steel, 1 food and 1 goods, which is perfect. That covers all the resources I need for armored cars and also for light tanks. I'm gonna be good for navy as well. Rare materials are going to become a problem later on. So here in Tegucigalpa, I am going to construct an industry so that I can enhance my resource production of rare materials. And as I produce a lot of manpower in my cities, I am going to construct recruitment stations. A level 1 recruitment office is going to increase the manpower with 35%, so that is great. So I'm gonna build a couple of those. They cost a lot of goods, so I shouldn't build too many neither, but I'm gonna make at least 2 of them. 1 over here, and I can also make 1 over here. And you know what? I'm gonna queue up immediately the second one. I'm gonna do the same over here. I'm gonna queue up level 2. Perfect. So now at least I have got that covered. Morale on my provinces is 70%, which is why it is important to attack as fast as possible AI countries, because if you take a capital, you're gonna get a morale increase of 10% in all your provinces, as you want to get your province morale up to 100% as soon as possible to enhance your economy. However, I am here in for a tough proposition, as I only have 1 access to an immediate capital, which is Belize, and I've got also the threat of South Mexico, who is putting his units on my border, which makes an easy expansion to get a better economical advantage way more difficult. As you can see, my metal is going down fast, as 1 armored car costs 810 steel, and then also 4 recruitment offices. A level 2 recruitment office costs 550 steel, so that's gonna be 1100 steel extra. I produce only 233 metal an hour, and it takes 3 hours to produce an armored car. So as soon as my steel reserve is done, I'm only gonna be able to produce 1 armored car every 3 hours with the steel production that I have. So I need to increase my steel production. However, I don't have any access to steel over here. It is rare materials and goods. And in Panama we have goods, rare material and oil. So that is a big problem. I have no early game access to steel, and also to produce submarines I'm gonna need steel. My submarine research has been completed, and on the mobile version I have decided, when I was not on my desktop, to start the research already for naval bombers. Using the mobile version is very cool, because when you're not on a desktop or you are out of the house, you can play anywhere you want at any time. Now my light tank research is going to finish in only a couple seconds. There we go. So now I am going to research interceptors so that I can protect my airspace. I have decided to research naval bombers, as naval bombers, they don't need any steel to be produced, and you're perfect to protect your coast. Submarines cost steel to produce, 610. I'm gonna be in less of steel trouble in the start of the game. However, submarines are very good because they can sneak up on targets and engage in close combat. They are used for hunting transport convoys or unescorted ships, but have to avoid destroyers which can reveal submarines. They deal 8.5 hit points, so if you put units at sea, subs can really tag them. They are stealth, so subs are pretty good. I love subs. Naval bombers are also very practical because they deal 8.1 damage against ships, but they are much faster than a sub. They have a bigger range, 350 range, so that's pretty cool. They can also reveal subs, so naval bombers are real sub hunters. They're also very good against convoy units, so land units at sea. So naval bombers are best used to attack ships and to reveal and destroy submarines. When operating from aircraft carriers, they can protect their fleet and scout ahead. They deal a bit of damage against units, but it's better if they attack ships, and they deal 5.8 hit points versus submarines. And I've also received a message from South Mexico. Apparently he's a fan of my channel, which is starting to become a problem for me because, well, I can't stay incognito in this case. And so, yeah, he's chill, he's good to go north, I'm gonna go south, so that's amazing. I've scouted the AI, he has quite some units, so now I'm gonna pull him back, there we go. And I will have researched light tanks. I might as well produce a couple of those. A couple of light tanks never hurt, so I'm gonna produce one light tank next, one armored car, light tank, armored car. We're gonna do it like this. There we go. Right, let's check the front reports. Got my first 2 armored cars that have been produced. Naval bomber research has been terminated, so I've got now my interceptors that are also researching. And then for so far my build order is complete, so I have researched interceptor, naval bomber, armored car, light tank, which enables me to unlock tomorrow the medium tank, and the naval tab I have researched submarine, and then tomorrow also rocket artillery will be available, so I am perfect on schedule. Nice. Gonna have a stack of 10 units over here, gonna have a stack with 10 units over here in this province as well. Here I've got 7 units now, that's 9 with the light tank that's going to be produced, that's perfect. Here I've got 1 armored car too many, so it's good to have a scout unit in there. Then I can send 1 infantry to my capital, that's always good. There we go. I'm gonna put my plane in patrol. Planes parked on the ground can get attacked easily and locked in melee combat. A plane on patrol, if this airbase is captured, then my plane will be transferred to La Ceiba, then I will not lose my unit. Perfect, everything is looking good, got it all queued up. So now it is time for me to go to bed. Tomorrow my units will be in place to attack Panama and Belize City. That should be fun. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and hit that bell button for notifications. I want to say a warm thank you to my members and elite members for supporting this channel.